thing to have to like do this like I don't know catwalk strut as you're trying to introduce a panel. So thank you for the applause. My name is Angelique Jackson. I am one of the senior entertainment writers at Variety, and it is my pleasure to be here as you all are some of the first to see this incredible adaptation of A Man in Full. So really, without further ado, let's start bringing some folks up here to join me. First, we have Sarah Jones, who plays Serena Croker. Next, we have Shantae Adams, who you saw as Jill Hensley. Next, we have Jon Michael Hill, who is Conrad Hensley. Next, we have Aml Ameen, who is Roger Wright. Now we have Lucy Liu, who plays Joyce Newman. Followed by Diane Lane, who is Martha Croker. Next, we have Jeff Daniels, who plays Charlie. Coming up now, we have executive producer and director Thomas Schlamme. And now we have executive producer and director Regina King. And last but certainly not least is showrunner, writer, and executive producer David E. Kelley. Well, thank you all for joining us, because I know when I finished this first episode, I had a lot of thoughts, feelings, excitement about where this was to come. But David, I want to start with you, because it's my understanding that you may have read this book a time or two, and this project might have originated with you. Tell me more.
True. I read it in the late 90s, loved it. It stuck with me. I read it again 3 or 4 years later, stuck with me. Read it 3 or 4 years later after that, and thought, this really needs to get made. So started with Tom Wolfe. It's a brilliant book. He was prescient in the themes that he mined back in the 90s have only become more ripe today. And I'm always a sucker for rich and delicious characters, and this book certainly had it, starting with Charlie Croker and the others.
When you thought about initially adapting this, what kind of challenges did you foresee, and how did this, this incredible ensemble really adapt to those and make what we saw on the screen?
Well, probably the first big challenge is accomplishing the tonal blend of the piece. The book was both funny, dramatic, topical. It had a lot of things going on. I've been a fan, so first, who's going to direct it? Who's going to capture and accomplish that tone? And I've been a fan of this lady for a long time. I tried to cast her forever. She always said no, so I thought, well, I'll try. But if you've seen Regina's work, and we all have as an actress, she has those muscles to play drama and comedy at the same time. She can be funny without compromising the stakes of the story. That is not easy to do. And I loved One Night in Miami, the movie, so I knew that she would bring it tonally for us too. And I called, I think I might have begged.
You sent an email from David Kelley, and I'd never met David Kelley in my life.
Well, I tried every other form of communication.
It hadn't worked yet, so the email worked. That was smart.
Oh no, it worked. My sister, I was like, oh my God, Raina. I think I've got an email from David Kelley, and it's not a deep fake. I think it's real.
So you get this email, and what was your knowledge of the book before? What excited you about this proposition?
Honestly, David Kelley. I'm familiar with Tom Wolfe, but I was not familiar with The Man in Full. And I received that email, and I was just like, wow, David Kelley actually watches shit I do. And so he said that this is a story that he had been thinking about telling, and he had already written the script for it, the pilot script. And if I was interested in coming on board and just playing in the sandbox with him, I'll send it to you. And I'm like, yes! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And I read it and I was like, ooh, okay. Well, either we will sync together or we will just have a blast together. And we had a blast together. And at that time, he was like, so I would love for you to direct all of them. And I was like, ooh, yeah, that's gonna be a lot. And we talked about, well, who would be someone that I would want to direct all of these episodes with. We felt very strongly that we didn't want it to be a lot of directors, just wanted someone whose sensibility and who's someone who knows great story, and for me had a similar sensibility as myself, but actually was I'll be quite honest, a white man that understands the world and the space that we were in, but also understands the stakes that we were going to have to tackle in a satirical way, but also in a heartfelt way. Who do I know that is like that?
And Jason Reitman was not available.
I called Tommy Schlamme my Schlamme. And so he came on board and we dove in, all of us, Matt Tinker, and then we said, who is Charlie Croker? Who can people like not give up on in the first episode? It has to be someone that we all love. And enter stage left.
Well, Tommy, I'm gonna come back to you, but I'm gonna jump to Jeff since you did tee me up for that. But what was it about Charlie that made you feel like you wanted to thread that needle? Because it is that swing of, there are things that he does that, especially as the series goes on, that you might go, okay. But then you do also a lot of the time want him to succeed. So what was it about playing that dichotomy that was interesting?
Well, when I did a Zoom meeting with David and Regina, and they said that Tommy was involved, I think, at the time as well. And I said, well, there's 3 people that have my back. And I had read the first episode, and I saw how big he was, how larger than life he was. And they don't teach you at Star School how to be larger than life. It's, I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille, and then they just act in front of a mirror. I had to go big and still be believable, and those are the hardest parts to do. I didn't have a clue as to how I was going to do this, and I said, yes, I'm in. And that was because I think at this point too, and I think all of us on this thing did, we're risking failure here. This could have been a disaster. It really could. But it wasn't. I mean, they surrounded me with a great cast that people were willing to go all in, I mean, I remember that conference room with Tom and Bill. We were sitting in the little cast chairs, and I'm going, do not leave me out on a limb. You need to go there with me. Come on. And they said, "We're in. Okay, we're in." And so that was great. I knew early on that we had something pretty special, but knowing that these three were behind the monitor for me, that helped me like take even more chances.
I want to mention one other person in that conference room too, Sarah. Because there's something about Serena in that scene. You know, I'm Southern, I'm actually from Georgia, and so watching this was quite an experience. But the way in which she knows what her role is and how she's going to kind of throw off and manipulate without really saying much of anything it's quite genius. You know, what was it like to be in a scene like that where you know the swings are gonna be so big, and you don't get to be big?
Hi. Well, it's very easy to just jump in when you know that you're working with Jeff Daniels, and Tommy and Regina. Like, when you have this caliber of artistry, it makes your job really easy. But I do remember one of the first day I think Jeff and I worked together, he leaned in, he went, "Just so you know, I'm gonna go big." I'm like, "I got you. I'll throw whatever you want to my way. I'll catch it, I promise." And I did my best, but it was very easy to just stay with him, because it really was such a pleasure and a joy to watch Jeff's process and his artistry, and he is so giving as well, not just as a human but as an actor in scenes. He doesn't take up the space. He's figuring out what's going to tell the best story, and that was incredibly inspiring to be able to do those scenes with him. So it really made my job very easy. It was really a joy and a pleasure.
Well, Tommy, I told you I would come back. I know. I can call Jason. But I am very curious about that idea of shaping this story together, because that very much is what you have to do when you're threading the needle, as Regina mentioned, of all of these tones. So what did that look like as you're kind of taking it from what we've all seen in episode 1 and knowing the arc is going to come back around? What did that process look like for the three of you all in the beginning?
Well, look, I think part of the job that we all do is we're collaborators. I mean, that is the essence of trying to make something like this. So once you're starting from that purpose and that drive, then it's just spending time with David and Regina and really talking and really figuring out the show and talking together. And so it's not much different than whether you do it alone or whether you do it with a group. And in this case, you know, I had worked with David in the past when I was a very young man, and we did series together, and we did a couple of pilots. So it was really exciting to be able to work with him again, and to work with Regina was just a thrill for me. But I would just want to say that what everybody's saying is the tightrope, the incredible failure that we were capable of falling into, was exactly the reason I wanted to do this. That's what's fun. It's walking that tightrope was really, really fun. And to do it with this group of people was really an incredible experience.
Well, when I was kind of looking into the early reaction, because most folks obviously have only seen the trailer thus far, but one of the comments that stood out to me were somebody said something along the lines of, "Diane Lane and Lucy Liu playing besties, you know, count me in." And part of that, and what people haven't seen yet, is the actual exploration of these women that happens in this series. You know, for each of you, what was so interesting about playing Martha and Joyce and the journeys that they go on over these 6 episodes?
Okay. This was a joy of a project, and it's true. It could have been a bumpy experience, and it could have turned out as this experiment that was a nice try, but I'm so proud of it, and I'm so delighted for all of us. The two of you directing us, we were in such strong, safe hands. And to get to work with Lucy, I mean, we got to share moments together that were, it's coming. You're going to see support systems, many different varieties of support systems that women provide to each other. And that's an important thing in a man's world, such as the Croker world is. And you know, I'm thrilled, and we had fun, and it was interesting to be a fierce ex-wife kind of prototype, but also a woman who, you know, Jeff and I, we attempted to create a rich history without it showing or being spoken about necessarily. And I want to commend you on keeping all of our energies in the right place in between takes. Thank you for that, because that's effortful, and you made that effort, and it really helped us all to stay on track. And so,
What did I do?
you don't have to know that, we know. Anyway, over to you, Lucy.
Well, I agree. I think when you go in headlong at a project, it is such a question mark. And I also had a Zoom with Regina, who I worked with on Southland, and David, obviously, I worked with on Ally McBeal. For, you know, that was 90s. So, and Jeff and I worked on a Broadway play together, God of Carnage. And Jon Michael worked with me for 7 years on Elementary. So it was really, really kind of wonderful. And they didn't really know where my character was going, but the fact that David and Regina were calling me to ask me to be a part of this was so surprising, because it was taking elements of different parts of my life and putting them together. And, you know, at this point in my career, it's really about who I'm working with and, you know, what I can do with the project, if I can do something. And in this, I just sort of said yes, because that's what you want. You want to be part of something that is, you know, special because of the people, you know, and the characters sometimes come second. And, you know, knowing that David is such a prolific writer and so colorful in how he describes people or how they describe things with their words was enough for me. And Regina, I have always been in awe of her as an actress, and to see her shine like this, it's not unusual. I mean, I think it's like, to me, everything she does is always stellar. And to be able to be a part of that with her sister, it made such a difference. And then, of course, that you know, that scene you see us doing that, what looks like a simple task was very difficult. We would be texting, are you doing this? Like, what's happening? It was like, I mean, I thought I was coordinated, but apparently I wasn't. But anyway, it's wonderful to jump in headlong. So thank you.
Aerobics is always harder than it looks. And also trying to do badly at aerobics is also difficult, Diane. I know you. But David, I'm actually interested in the idea of the adaptation of this as well, because there are storylines that are different from the book. There are characters that are added, expanded, changed. What did kind of the process of filling all of these roles out look like for you as you wanted to find also then again the right folks to fill them?
Well, one of the challenges that was not there was adjusting it for modern day, because the themes, as I alluded to earlier, that Tom Wolfe wrote about in the 90s only became more ripe and sadly even more present as time goes on. So there was no real adjustment in terms of having to update it. The biggest challenges were logistical and you know, production values, because in the book was very expansive. It went to the West Coast. We had earthquakes, we had prison riots, a lot that we couldn't accomplish even in a miniseries. But I found that the best way to stay true to the story and mind the characters was to stay tethered as tightly as I could to Charlie Croker, because he was the driving engine of the book. He's not in every scene physically, but he is tangentially, and he is in this piece too. People are either battling Charlie Croker or reeling from offenses that they've taken from him, or they're feeling the effects of his influence. But he is there in every scene. So it started with him. He was the nucleus, and then mining out the other characters. It just fell into place. It was not. People have asked me, well, it must have been a mountain of an adaptation, and the architecture was all there in the book. The world was there. The characters were finely drawn. The observations that Tom Wolfe drew about human behavior, and the ones that we tried to depict in a satirical way, that was all there. So my mission really was to take this very thick book, write it in a way that it could be produced in 6 hours and not screw it up.
He was locked on that 6 hours. Boy, Netflix was like, well, maybe 8. And he was like, no, 6.
Netflix was like, how can we make this 2, 3, 4? Are you guys sure you want to do a limited series? It's really meaty. Aml, that actually does bring me over to you and to Roger. Because when David was just talking about the characters that Charlie affects, in kind of our one of our early meeting scenes, when you come into the office, and we're getting a chance to see how the two of them navigate their relationship and how complicated that can be sometimes when your boss says the things that you really can't necessarily react to, in part because you are his attorney and you gotta get him through this trials and tribulations, but also want to be like, what was it about Roger and that relationship, and then the other relationships that he's kind of being pulled between throughout this project that was really interesting for you?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, my boss spits on me. We were talking about, Jeff, that you spat on me the first time we did the thing.
I did. I caught him right on the nose.
Pete Brass. I was like, oh, wow. This is where we're going. You know, the opportunity to work with Regina King, who contacted me, a mutual friend, who contacted me about it and came to me about the project. You know, I'm a massive, massive, massive fan as an actor. These are actors that kind of inspired me to have the career I have. And David E. Kelley is literally responsible for my life changing. He gave me a show, Harry's Law, 2010. That's my entrance point into my American career. So this project means a lot to me from that standpoint. You know, it's like a full circle moment. But Roger White, you're talking about, you know, a very dynamic, good man, but very dynamic person, and someone that's reaching a place in his life where he's successful, he's taking care of his family, but, you know, like I saw that, you know, when your soul starts knocking and you're like, how have I done? Have I lived a life of meaning? And I think that's the journey he goes on. Charlie Croker represents someone that lives boldly and brashly and like himself, and I think Roger finds that inspiring, but at the same time, you know, offensive, you know, in the way he maneuvers through the world. I also like the fact that on one part he's this inspiration, the person that helped him become who he is, but then he's got to go a completely different journey, you know. And I remember this moment actually. I was sitting down with Jeff, and he's like, "Have you seen episode 4, 5, and 6?" I was like, "Nah, mate. What's going on there?" He's like, "You should take a look at episode 4, 5, and 6." Because 4, 5, and 6, I get these massive, classic David E. Kelley speeches. And so for the next month, I've been walking around the apartment down in Atlanta, just like, OGC 891442, subsection A, subsection, just keep going. And Jeff was like, yo, you better look at that stuff. So immediately, really, and then I just walked past him like, hey, how's it going, OGC 891442? So listen, as an actor, this is one of the most prominent opportunities I've ever had to play, and with such a powerful cast. And trust me, when you watch the show, when you've seen the episode, it's amazing to watch a show where you're loving everybody's work. You know what I mean? Like, you're enjoying other people's storylines more than your own. Like Bill Clinton and Jeff Daniels in those scenes together, like, it just gets wild. So, and then working with Jon Michael and Shantae Adams on those courtroom scenes were beautiful. So, yeah.
Okay, like Amel said, y'all have something to look forward to, especially as we get to episodes 4, 5, and 6 about what he's teasing with these courtroom scenes. And that does bring me to Jon Michael and Shantae, the Hensley family, this family on the precipice of their next chapter when it gets so violently interrupted. What was it about Conrad and Jill and the story, the arc that we will see them go through, that you'll take with each of you?
Well, I've always loved playing characters whose world is flipped completely upside down, and just having to go through that journey. I feel like that's where all the fun is as an actor. And to be able to do it alongside Jon Michael and Aml Ameen, I mean, me as a person, every day I'm showing up to work, I'm inspired. Like, the way these artists work, the way that Jeff Daniels comes to work and knows all of his lines. The way Aml, like you said, them speeches were like 3 pages long. Like, that's not something that I would want to do. And so just the opportunity to be able to show up and work alongside these people, and to be able to play Jill, who's such a loving and caring character, but has to go through something really traumatic as she's a newlywed and a mama to be. And so it's so much fun, and it's an amazing emotional landscape that Jill just kind of gets to play with.
I gotta go after that. Working with Shantae was a dream. Part of what is the joy about this for me is holding the mirror up and really trying to connect to people. So hopefully they look at Conrad's storyline and see something that could happen to any of us, but it's amplified because of the perceptions of Black men in America. That's sort of what he's up against in this, and I hope that people are able to look at our legal system in a different way, but also at the heart of this thing, it's really just like anything can happen to a family, and you're desperate to try to hold it together. So no matter what David puts Conrad through during the show, you can be sure that at the center of it, there's this gravitational pull, and I'm just hoping that comes across to people.
That line, that piece of dialogue, "This is not right," the resonance that has throughout this story and through this piece, and in certain ways, even how it maybe not parallels Charlie's journey, I think is kind of what stays with you after you're finished watching these 6 episodes. I kind of put that question to each of you as we kind of start to bring this to a conclusion, is what is the thing about this experience beyond the true art that it was, that sticks with you about this story, and you hope that sticks with the audience as well? Regina, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that's one of the beautiful things about David Kelley and Tom Wolfe's style of writing. They both write from a satirical space, but there are themes in there that are real and are grounded. And one of the things that's always been fascinating for me with telling this story, because I am a woman, and I am a feminist, and I love women, but I love men, and clap. And the thing that was really special to me, and we talk about this a lot as we were developing and as we were going through the telling and the composing of the story, was the fragility of the male, and we had we have an amazing composer, Craig DeLeon. I don't know. Craig! Truly understood that from a sonic place. And when you look at every single one of these characters, Tom Pelfrey isn't here, but he plays Raymond Peatgrass, who you guys got to see. Each one of these men, they actually make choices based on their fragile spaces that they're in. And we were able to find some humor in some of it, but as you continue to watch the series, I hope you also understand the sensitivity and desperation in some of their choices. Like, I'll just take I don't want to give it up. No, I can't say that. You have to watch. But there are choices that every single one of the men in full or not so much in full make are from a place of just insecurity, also feeling like this is what I need to do to protect. This is what I need to do to protect me, to protect my family. All of these choices that are made are fascinating, and also I understand them. I've seen them. And that's one of the things that David said to me in our very first conversation, that even if these characters are bigger than life, I want us to see us in them in some spaces. So while it is a man in full, and while some of our characters of women, our female characters are not, they don't share as much screen time as probably the men, they are the women in full in so many ways. And I hope that you all receive that when you continue to watch. But I hope I answered your question.
I think there was a way that we sort of defined it in one simple thing, which is the vulnerability in the circus of humanity. And I think all the characters, male or female, sort of reflect that throughout the series.
That is absolutely what makes this series stand out, is as we look at each and every one of these people and the decisions that they have to make, while we may never be in any of those positions, you find yourself, most of them, hopefully not, you find yourself wondering, what would I do if faced with any of these challenges? Jeff, I will ask you that question, or kind of to speak to that about Charlie, and what it was like to explore those vulnerabilities of him throughout this.
Well, he got real vulnerable after they called the note on 800 million. So that'll make Charlie vulnerable, you saw. No, it was a joy to play him. You're larger than life, and you're like a big blimp of the male ego hovering over a man. And then they stick a hole in it, and for 6 episodes you watch it just spike. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, I love how funny it is. Even fuck him up the ass, fuck him on the head, fuck him on the head. When I go, David E. Kelley wrote that? Was that Tom? That might have been Tom. Anyway, so the humor in it loosens you up to hit you with Conrad's story. It sets you up. And that's what I love about things that, we simultaneously use comedy at the same time with drama, and it's hard to do, but when we do it right, and I think Regina and Tommy and David did, and this cast did, it sets us up for being even more powerful than if we'd done it without humor. And so I'm really
Listen, dignity-ectomy and Miss Ariel Grande are lines that I will never, ever forget. But truly, thank you all so much for joining us for this early preview